Hans Gruenberg concludes visit to London devoted to Yemeni crisis. The United Nations calls on the warring parties to avoid weaponizing Hodeidah ports. Local rights organization urged Houthi militia to hand over mine maps in Shabwa. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Rana Swalam. The Special Envoy for Yemen, Hans Gruenberg, concluded a visit to the United Kingdom. Gruenberg discussed with a number of senior British officials the deteriorating economic situation in Yemen, as well as the recent military escalation. He asserted that all parties should engage in a political dialogue in order to decrease violence and find a way towards a negotiated solution. The United Nations mission to support the Hodeidah Agreement expressed its great concern over allegations of the militarization of Hodeidah ports. The mission reminded the parties that Hodeidah ports are a crucial lifeline for millions of Yemeni people. It calls on the parties of conflict to resolve Hodeidah ports matter with restraint and to ensure the protection of Hodeidah's ports. Hodeidah stands again as the most geopolitical city in Yemen, with the Houthi rebels controlling its key ports, and amidst reports of Iran smuggling arms to the rebels from this gate, the threat to the safety of the Red Sea has increased. The following report has more details.
The port of Hodeidah is considered the second largest Yemeni port and the main seaport of the capital, Sana'a. Currently, it is the lifeline for more than 10 million Yemenis, as about 70% of imports come through it. The port was built by the Soviet Union in 1961. Hodeidah port is unique with a number of advantages in terms of its strategic location, proximity to international shipping lines. It has natural protection from waves and water currents, and is not exposed to the monsoon winds. Houthi rebels took control of the port late 2014. The port is the sole international gateway for Houthis, as the coalition imposes sea and air blockade since it intervened in the conflict early 2015. Houthis use the port for arms smuggling and other military operations. A Yemeni military official said that Hodeidah is the outlet to the smuggling of Iranian missiles and drones. He said that it is a site for reassembling smuggled weapons and the launching of missiles and drones towards civilian targets in Yemen and Saudi lands. Earlier, the Arab coalition released video footage of Hezbollah member confirming that the sea was the only gateway for support to the Houthis. Military analysts believe that the evidence presented by the Saudi-led coalition on the use of port of Hodeidah for the smuggling of weapons has left the seaport at risk of losing its civilian immunity, the way the Sana'a airport did. This would completely cut off any smuggling through the port. They indicated that the immunity of Sana'a airport, which was used for military operations, was lifted, and this may be repeated with the port of Hodeidah. A Saudi military analyst predicted that the coming period would witness a joint naval operation between Yemeni forces with the support of the Arab coalition to liberate the port of Hodeidah. Houthis' continuous use of civilian sites for military purposes, especially port of Hodeidah and Sana'a airport, would affect more than 10 million Yemenis who depend on aids that come through these ports. With this, the port of Hodeidah is believed to lose its immunity like Sana'a airport, especially with intelligence information revealed by the coalition, forcing the United Nations to lift the immunity.
Amnesty International quoted international civil society groups demanding an urgent action against impunity for Yemen crimes. In a joint statement, the organizations renewed their call upon the UN General Assembly to establish a new international accountability mechanism for Yemen. They noted that this will send a clear warning to human rights violators who will be held accountable for war crimes. The coalition launched a large-scale military operation in order to complete the liberation of Yemen from the Houthis. A statement by the spokesman for the coalition, Turki al-Malki, stated that the new military operation will cover all fronts in Yemen under the name Freedom of Happy Yemen. The Giants Brigades announced the liberation of the entire Shabwa governorate from the terrorist Houthi militia. In a statement, the Giants Brigades announced the end of the third phase of operation by liberating Ain district after 10 days of intense fighting. The following report has more details.
The Battle of Shabwa was declared victorious after giant brigades controlled the last directorate in the governorate, Ain. After the liberation of Shabwa, The brigades now are pushing ahead to Bayda in the south and Ma'rib in the north. The giant brigades rallies for cohesion with the government forces who are defending Houthi rebels from penetrating the southern fronts of the oil-rich Ma'rib.
We are heading towards Ma'rib and Al-Bayda. God willing, we will score more victories. The losses in the ranks of the militia are countless. Their dead militants are in the streets and everywhere. They lost vehicles and arms and escaped. There are big losses among Houthi militia. God willing, they will be surely defeated. They collapsed within minutes and escaped frantically. Their victims are scattered in the streets and in the hilltops. They throw their arms and we destroyed their vehicles. The losses are countless and we thank God for this great victory.
In face of the sweeping victory of the giant brigades, the Houthi rebels escaped the battlefield, leaving behind their equipment and arms. The militia were inflicted with big losses, both in lives and weaponry. Panic and fear gripped Houthi militants as the giant brigades advanced to liberate new areas. Shabwa, Ma'rib and Bayda could be the hopeful triangle of victory for the Yemeni legitimacy over the Houthi rebels. The three neighboring governorates are strategic hotpoints from which the government forces backed by the giant brigades and popular resistance will drive the rebels back to the north. The giant brigades have successfully controlled Usaylan, Bayhan and Ain, which constitute a main artery for Houthi supplies in Ma'rib.
Medical sources in the capital Sana'a reported that hospitals were overcrowded with the bodies of the dead Houthi militia. Coinciding with that, other sources said that the militia launched a wide campaign to recruit new fighters to the front lines. Local sources said that the militia forced its affiliates in various neighborhoods of the capital Sana'a to mobilize and recruit new fighters. Civilians were killed and injured as a result of mine explosions planted by the Houthi militia on the desert road linking Shabwa and Ma'rib. The Yemeni Landmine Observatory reported 3 mine explosions have occurred in civilian vehicles in Wadi Harib in the eastern side of Ma'rib, causing civilian casualties. Houthi militia inflicts every area they control with their deadly mines nationwide. With the liberation of Shabwa, local human rights organization urged the militia to hand over the maps of minefields that they have spread everywhere. More details on the story are within this report.
Houthi rebels seems determined to inflict Yemenis with death everywhere, the last of which is planting mines in large scale in different areas of Shabwa. A human rights organization spoke of alarming reports about Houthis' contamination of Usaylan and Bayhan, including residential areas with mines, explosive devices and unexploded ordnance. Miyun Human Rights Organization warned in a statement that these mines represent a severe danger to civilians. Earlier Yemen landmine records confirmed that 5 citizens were killed and others injured in an explosion of Houthi-planted mines in Usaylan. The organization called on citizens to remain alarmed and to be cautious of such danger. It also called on displaced to not return back to their homes, as those areas are still contaminated. Meanwhile, Miyun organization called for displaced to remain until such areas be cleared from mines and war remnants. It also called for Houthis to share mine-laying maps in the districts. The human rights organization stressed the need for the United Nations to pressure Houthis' leadership to hand over the maps to prevent more civilians from being killed. The organization requested demining programs including Massam project to mobilize their engineering teams to Shabwa's liberated districts and clear them from mines so citizens can return back to their homes safely. For his part, the director of the National Mine Action Program, Brigadier General Amin Al-Aqili, said that response teams of Yamak and Massam have moved to liberate areas of mines planted by Houthis. He added that 3 engineering teams had previously been sent to Usaylan, pointing out that the mining efforts would include Al-Safra, Saq and high-impact areas in Usaylan and Bayhan. The official warned citizens in the areas from approaching suspicious and dangerous areas until they are cleared and secured by the engineering teams.
The United Nations said that more than 22,000 individuals were displaced by the end of December to Al-Khoukha, Makha and other areas in the West Coast. The organization added that the situation in the West Coast front lines remains volatile and warned from a sudden large-scale displacement. It noted that mines continue to pose a major safety risk. A report by international experts revealed that nearly 2,000 Yemeni children were killed in 17 months while participating with the terrorist Houthi militia on the battlefronts. The annual report of the Security Council's panel of experts said that 1,406 children died on the battlefields in 2020, and another 502 children were killed between January and May 2021. The Yemeni Committee for Human Rights Investigation said that 2,842 incidents concerning violations of human rights have been investigated during the past year. Coming next. The United Nations says that a woman dies every 2 hours in Yemen.
اضطرينا نحن نغادر من ذي ونزحنا.
الله يستنقذكم يا محويتني الله يستنقذ.
Welcome back. The United Nations said that 1 woman dies every 2 hours during childbirth. The organization said this is about 5 times above the average in the Middle East and North Africa. The report estimated that 5 million women have limited access to health services. The following report has more details.
Women in Yemen are suffering on a daily basis with many different reasons, making their lives hard. COVID-19 has made it even harder for many Yemeni women to function their lives properly. Unfortunately, the increasing vulnerability of women has not been acknowledged by most COVID-19 related policies. Whether female health workers or housewives, women have been at the front line of dealing with the pandemic. Many Yemeni women found success in their new trades, which made them feel empowered. But with the emergence of COVID-19 pandemic, this has cut short their success, and with it hopes of a better life. Many small businesses have closed, and the closure of schools has increased the burden of care for mothers. The rate of healthy violence against women in Yemen was already very high in the context of the ongoing conflict in 2017. UNFPA had recorded 2.6 million women and girls which were at risk of gender-based violence. With the added economic, health, and social stressors of COVID-19, domestic violence cases are on the rise. Many Yemeni women have shown a high level of flexibility and have worked hard to survive and create their own opportunities during the war. But unfortunately, the COVID-19 outbreak has affected them badly. Women in Yemen have been paying the price of the conflict in the country, and now they are bearing the burden of COVID-19. These Yemeni women need support, and they just need peace in their country.
The UN has indicated that millions of Yemenis are facing problems to pass freely among cities. This has prevented people from easily accessing food and health services. Therefore, those people become the victim of famine. The following report has more details.
The United Nations announced that millions of Yemenis are facing restrictions on freedom of movement in the country that has been witnessing a war for nearly 7 years. This came in a report issued by the Office of the UN Envoy to Yemen, Hans Grunberg. The report added that the conflict has destroyed Yemen for more than 7 years, killing and displacing thousands of civilians, and causing devastating effects on infrastructure, state institutions, the social fabric, and the economy. The daily life of millions of Yemenis across the country is becoming increasingly difficult due to the suspension of salaries, the deterioration of the currency, the lack of access to basic services, education, and health care, as well as severe restrictions on their freedom of movement. The UN report pointed out that the restrictions imposed on freedom of movement affect millions of Yemenis who are forced to use longer and usually dangerous roads with security checkpoints and run by armed elements from different groups who often commit human rights violations without accountability. This has significantly increased the average travel time for Yemenis compared to what it was before the war. The UN office stressed that comprehensively addressing the issue of freedom of movement in Yemen is complex and requires many measures to address the full solution of the problem. UN also stressed the need for the roads inside Yemen to be available for the use of civilians, especially the main roads that are important for travel and trade between and within the governorates. In its report, the office called for securing these roads by clearing mines and ensuring that checkpoints are safe and that the security authorities that run it are accountable. Until the end of 2021, the war in Yemen had killed 377,000, directly and indirectly, according to the United Nations. The war has cost the country's economy $126 billion in one of the worst humanitarian and economic crises in the world, with most of the population of 30 million dependent on aid. The international community should all come together to find a solution to end the conflict in Yemen, or else people will keep dying and the country will collapse.
The annual report of the Security Council team of experts revealed that the Houthi rebels initiate economic crisis to create a black market. The report added that the Houthis run the black markets and receive illegal fees from the sale. It noted that the Houthis collected more than 70 billion Yemeni riyals from revenues of the port of Hodeidah. The National Committee Against Coronavirus recorded 12 new cases of the pandemic. Committee officials said that there was one recovered case and no death. With the current updates, the total confirmed cases are 10,120, including 1,987 deaths and 7,045 cases of recovery. Here's a reminder of the main headlines. Hans Grunberg concludes visit to London devoted to Yemeni crisis. The United Nations calls on the warring parties to avoid weaponizing Hodeidah ports. Local rights organization urged Houthi militia to hand over mine maps in Shabwa. This is the end of the news. For more, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Yemen Today English. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.